Hello, hello, hello. We are making a video with the baby dog next to me under the sleeping bag. Yes, it's very nice. We just ate popcorn and french fries together, the baby dog and I. Paul made those. They tasted so good. And then he went outside. I filled the water container that he has outside, a large water container. I refilled that today, and I put 2 large rocks into the water container. I cleaned all of that with a brush and kaolin clay and rinsed it, and then I put the rocks into it for good energy. For energy, crystal healing. And so after eating french fries and popcorn, he went outside and he drank a whole lot of water, and then he came back and he felt good. And now he feels good and relaxed. And it's always important to cover your short-haired dog. Very, very important to do. Yes, this is a Walmart fitted sheet underneath. And this is also a Walmart. This used to be a Walmart sheet, but I made a pillowcase out of it. This works very well. So I'm making another pillowcase just like this upstairs. Then I have 2, and these are just fitted exactly for these pillows here, for those self-made pillows that I made out of foam rubber rests. So I utilize everything, which is very good to do. So this puffs up like really intensely. But that's okay. I want to talk about the psychiatry reform, because that's on my mind all the time, 24 hours, even when I sleep. I dream about it. I'm thinking about it all the time, all day long. I'm thinking about the psychiatry reform, because I know exactly how to reform this. Okay, I know how to reform it, to make it really, really, really well, to make it work, to make something, to reform something that is currently not working at all. Reform it into a paradise, and I can do it. I have what it takes to do it. I have it all thought through, okay, in detail, in the minutest details. And I keep on thinking about it, and I keep on weighing things off and thinking about ethical implications for a certain reform of this or something else, and whether that has some ethical implications that may cause problems, or I'm thinking about all of this in complete depths, because I don't want to suggest anything that may not work. So I want to lay it all out in a very doable theoretical pattern, okay, so that it's really, really easy to implement this into action. Okay, that's what I want to do. It needs to be done. I am not showing Paul. I'm not gonna be showing Paul. I'm not showing you. Not showing you. Not showing you. Not dry. Not dry. So, yes. That is how it is. So, yeah, it has to be done. It needs to be done. The sooner the better. Because what we have right now does not work. The prisons that we have make people crazier than they already are to begin with. Okay? So, what good does that do for the world? Doesn't do any good. It just makes things worse and worse and worse and worse. I had a friend once, her name was Michelle, and she rescued a bunch of animals, way too many animals. She was a hoarder, and she wanted to rescue all the animals, and I understand, but obviously that grew over her head, and that was just way, way too much. And the other people couldn't keep up helping her with all of this. So, and I told her that it is absolutely cruel to put any animal into a cage or crate. And she argued and said she doesn't know how else to deal with them. Then she needs to just bring these animals to an animal shelter or bring them to a farm, give them to people that have a farm, and just keep one dog, basically, and not have the dog in the crate. She had a large, what was that? I think it was a Malamute. That's like a Mastiff, but with long hair. And I think that's what it was, a Malamute. And they're very protective, and they become very crazy when they're put into a kennel or crate. They can't handle that at all. And what happened was she had a party there, invited us over. We had the Kenny, the Great Dane at that time, and that was, I should have thought about all of this. That was very risky what we did there. We came too late, but maybe that was our rescue, that we came too late to the party when everyone else, all the guests had left already, and we were just completely late. And it was during the summertime. It was, I don't know, it was probably like 8:00 p.m. And she said, they all left already, but it's okay. No, let's go for a little walk with our dogs. And she took the Malamute, whom she had put into a crate where he could not even turn around. Horrific. And I felt so sorry for the dog. We went for a little walk, and she said he tore down one of her goats or sheep, and he killed one of her goats and sheep. And the reason why, before we got there, okay, and then I was amazed that the dogs even got along with each other. So, but we had them on a leash, but still, I mean, there was, particularly after she told me that the dog had torn a goat, I don't know, one of those animals, one of those herd animals, and she put him into the crate afterwards. She thought there was some kind of training or something to teach him a lesson or something, which doesn't work at all, not at all. It does exactly the opposite. It makes any animal, any being, even crazier than they were already to begin with. And the same with prisoners, okay? It's exactly the same thing. And her family was very dysfunctional, and they're all very, very neurotic, those people. She means well, but she is mentally ill. And this task of rescuing animals and taking care of all of these animals, including savanna cats, I mean, those are very dangerous animals. They're exotic cats. They shouldn't even be here in this region. They haven't even been domesticated for very long, so people have them as pets, but that's wrong. Those are wild cats from Africa, from the savannah. Okay, that's where they're from. And that's where they should be. So, and then having to separate these animals because they would kill each other otherwise if they were together. I mean, that's just, the whole thing is just recipe for disaster, complete disaster. So, and the crate training and all of this, or the putting any animal or being into a crate or kennel, I talked about this many times before, it's cruel, absolutely cruel. And to put a prisoner who's already like psychotic and of course there are distinctions between psychosis and cluster B. But as Sam Vaknin already said, all of those different types of mental illnesses, they're usually, it's usually a mix of different mental illness forms. It never is like this picture book, one clear mental illness or another. Okay, it is always a mix or melange of different psychiatric symptoms. And cluster B are no exception. That is a mental illness form, okay? And how people later on react and cope and deal with their daily lives and their situation and their trauma that they had, how they deal with that in their adult lives, that is set from birth. That's set genetically. That's a genetic disposition on how someone proceeds in their adult life with their given trauma from childhood. So one person with the same trauma as the cluster B person will later on become a psychiatrist, probably always been dealing and dabbling with it and interested in fixing this. And the cluster B person refuses to go to school, refuses to get his life in order, takes drugs instead, parties instead, becomes a violent criminal. Okay. So it can go these opposite extremes in their adult lives with the same given trauma from childhood, with the same dysfunctional family and so on. They have studied that in depth because, and they can do these long-term studies with people because a lot of families have their own children as well as adopted children. And that's how you can see the difference. In the same household, with the same neurotic atmosphere, the neuroticism that is happening on a daily basis in their lives, with the father screaming or hitting children, and the mother being totally overwhelmed, and friends that come in, and maybe the sister is being raped or trafficked. Households that are that bad, okay? One kid can turn out this way and the other one turns out the other direction. So that has to do with genetic disposition. But there are people with the genetic disposition, they call it the warrior gene, which is really the wrong terminology, because a warrior is really someone like myself who is an animal mother, and who will stand up and fight to the bone to protect her loved ones, okay? That is what a warrior means. But, they always want to do this euphemism and give people a name for a characteristic, a name that is way milder than the symptoms actually are, okay? So I don't call it the warrior gene. I call it the cluster B gene because that's what it is, okay? Cluster B is the criminal gene, okay? And we have to call it that what it actually is in reality, okay? Because otherwise there'll be too much confusion and people will misunderstand things and stuff. So this cluster B gene, okay, that can be there, and there were even Buddhist monks that have been diagnosed with that. They thought they were warriors, and they were all like, proud. No, it's the criminal gene. Sorry. Yes, there are Buddhist monks with the criminal gene, okay. But the reason why they're not criminals, and why they're Buddhist monks instead, and they're living an extremely peaceful life, is because they have been through the Buddhist school, also from childhood on, of course. And their whole lives they have been. And I don't know if that's so beneficial for those kids to go through those rigorous Buddhist monk training. This rigorous monk training every year of their life, from childhood on. I don't know if that's so good. It wasn't good for the Dalai Lama. Okay, he went through this. That was not good for him. He said that they have beaten him with whips, and him and his brother, and that's not good, obviously. Okay, not all Buddhists are good. Not all Buddhists understand the actual teachings of Gautama Buddha. Because Gautama Buddha would have never allowed something like this. He would have never allowed Buddhist monks to whip their disciples with whips. He would have said that's unethical, that's absolutely unacceptable. That's abuse, okay? It's child abuse. That's what that is. But these Buddhist monks, they have been rigorously. So there's two variables that come in with the Buddhist monks. One variable is that they most likely were not whipped. It's probably only a minority of Buddhist monks that are doing this, because I think the majority of them, they know that this is wrong, okay, that any kind of violence is wrong that goes against the Buddhist religion, violence in general. So I think these Buddhist monks, they may have had a very strict schooling, but maybe not with violence, and they were rigorously trained, and it was very steady, not dysfunctional life that they grew up in. And then also the other variable is that they were completely indoctrinated, but in the right direction. And indoctrination is never good, but at least if they're indoctrinated and rigorously trained and schooled in the direction of never be disrespectful, never be unruly, never be violent, never hurt anyone. Equanimity, everything is always, we accept everything with grace and gratitude, okay? So that definitely shapes them in that direction, of course. Versus a kid from the United States growing up in a highly dysfunctional household without the father or with a violent father, then what are they learning from that? They want to be like daddy, and that's what they will become. Okay. So definitely how we grow up shapes us dramatically, of course. Our language, our mother language, also the language of the social network, the colloquial language, the word use, all of that. All of these things shape us and make us then adapt to that, and without even thinking about it. So that's why I don't want to be too harsh on people and judge them for having bad grammar or for not even being interested in science, because the home that they come from was not interested in science. The home they come from was verbally abusive. They used bad language. They were disrespectful to every being around them, including mother, father, children, everyone who came over. That is what these people grow up with. It takes an extremely old soul to not be okay with that, even from a very early age on. For Paul, for example, coming from an evangelical Christian household, he questioned this already at age 5. Okay, so now that has to do with previous lifetimes. He will disagree with that because he's an atheist. So I don't even debate him anymore on any of these things, because there's nothing really to debate, because he is very, very set in his ways. But I don't see a problem with him being an atheist. There is no conflict that comes out of it. Conflict comes out of living with someone who has a religion or belief system that enables behavior that will then be stepping on the toes of the other person. Okay, that's where the conflict comes in. I have a problem with evangelical Christians for that reason, because there are many issues I have with them. Because they put the human on a pedestal. They think the human is somehow godlike. Okay, I'm gonna explain this again. I've explained it many times before. For most of my life, I thought obviously humans have created their gods in their own image, not the other way around. So, and that is absolutely the case. But here comes something very wild that I have not expected ever. That there were ETs that have come to Earth. They have created Garden Eden. They were the ones with the Adam and Eve, okay? And there were others. There were human lineage before Adam and Eve, of course. Adam and Eve were made in the image of the ETs, okay? And they were probably the very first hybrids that they created, Adam and Eve. They called them Adam and Eve. So think about this for a moment. Also the names, Eve, okay? We're used to that name, so we accept that as a Western sort of name, right? But it's really not. ET names are names like Leti and Zug. Eve fits right in with this, okay? Just a little side note on this. They have almost oriental sounding names, and that's why I have a theory that there were ETs that landed in Asia, probably in China, and that's where the hot spot was. They landed in China. They created a power system there, and I know people think this is completely off the hook. This is so completely off the charts, what I'm going to say now. But I want to throw all of that in. It was about a month ago. I was at the other house and I was reviewing a video I had made in which I talked about ETs. And I think maybe that was the first time I talked about that Garden Eden project. I don't remember exactly, but I was talking about ETs in that video. And as I was talking about the ETs and also the way some of them looked, like with slanted eyes, but really slanted eyes, much more slanted eyes than the Asian people have, I suddenly saw there was a play happening in the monitor under me. I'm watching myself right now in this monitor here as I'm making the video, but I was reviewing my video. So when I review my video, I look at everything. So while I'm making the video, I'm very focused on what I say. I might glance over and see that play of lights there behind me on the wall, but I don't pay that much attention to the absolute nitty-gritty details of how a pattern is forming in the blanket, for example, when I'm really focused on what I'm saying. But when I'm reviewing the video, then I look at everything minutely. And as I listen to myself talk about the ETs, I see under me, just as you will see this video like this sideways, but I am like this here is really under me, right? But you see it frontally like this, but it's sideways. So this is down and this is up, obviously, So, so I saw under me in the blanket that was under me, and in this, also in the pillow formation, oh, that's what I had. I had a baby blanket here next to me that was sprawled out like this, and it was there, and it was also moving a little bit. And suddenly because I recognize patterns in random things. I recognize patterns in sheets and pillows and jackets, and particularly in baby blankets. Here, I'll show you. Here, right here, this baby blanket. And I had this like under me. You might, I don't know which video it was, but you might, if you watch my videos, you might find it. So, and maybe you will see it too. So I had this baby blanket there under me, and as I'm reviewing the video, I see how this baby blanket moves with my own movement. And inside of these creases and giris and sulkis that are shaping naturally, because this is a baby blanket, in these creases were all of the sudden, it wasn't all of the sudden there, it was already there all along, but I didn't see it. But all of the sudden I see it. I become aware of it. Become aware of faces with chests. Several, like 4 different faces with chests next to each other. And they're almost like interacting with each other because of the movement of the blanket. So, and I see different ETs. And I somehow recognize these as ETs because they were looking so unusual, much more exaggerated forms than what we normally see in humans. And the first ET, the very first one on this side here that I saw, that was looking towards the other ones, that I could see the profile or partly the profile of the face. He was looking over there towards the other ETs, and they were looking at him, and they were kind of interacting with each other. Facial movements and everything. And this ET really impressed me the most because I knew right away that's an ET. And I felt intuitively that is the ancestor of Asians. That is the ancestor of how the Asians with the slanted eyes and squinty eyes look today. So, and that's exactly what I have been wanting to talk about in this next video. Because, and all of these puzzle pieces, they come together with this. And my brain is very, very flexible when it comes to making connections. Most people would never even put these things together. They would not get the idea of putting that together. It's maybe someone on LSD would do that. And that's how my brain is naturally. Can you imagine? Can you imagine how difficult it is for me to exist in this rigid society with closed-minded people that are totally insane, and I am highly sensitive and my brain is that flexible. So you can just imagine how difficult it is, and how they in turn have made me quite crazy. But I'm healing up now, so the crazier I sound, the saner I am becoming. Because what is crazy for society is regarded as sane in my personal view. Okay? It's almost reversed, everything. So the saner I become, the crazier I may be sounding to other people. But I don't care. And I never really cared what other people think of me. So the saner I become, the more connections I'm actually making. In the past I've made some connections, but they it was all jumbled up in one big conundrum, and it was all frightening, and I didn't know how to deal with it. So I'm sorting all of this out now. And I see the connections. There, I watched a documentary film. There is a native tribe. I did not know this in the past. There is a native tribe in Japan. Forgot the name now of this tribe, but the name sounds incredibly eerily ET-ish. Okay. But the entire Asian continent sounds a little bit ET-ish. But then I get confused. Okay, here's what it is. This is so interesting. There's this native tribe in Japan at the northern edge of Japan. There is a sectation of Japan that belongs to Japan, but there are native Japanese people living there. And they do not look like the other Japanese people. They look more, we could compare them more to Europeans. Maybe they look a little bit, I don't know, how do I compare them? Almost French a little bit. So France is like really far away from Asia. So at the completely other end of that vast stretch of land between Asia and Europe. Okay, so, but they look almost a little bit French, these people. Short like the Japanese, but the facial features are almost kind of like French. Not slanted eyes, not squinty eyes, more like my eyes, but I think was more overlapping eyelids, but not squinty and not slanted. Sort of in between my eyelids. I have kind of almost African or Italian type of eyelids, and they have like halfway overlapping eyelids. So it's very difficult to explain, but I wish I could remember this. Maybe I will dig it up and try to put it under the video. I will see if I don't forget it. So, but I want to do this because I want people to look this up. There is a documentary film on the original Japanese, the native tribe in Japan. And they don't mix with the other Japanese people. Neither the native tribe nor the other ones want to have a lot of things to do with each other. That's very, very interesting. So this native tribe is almost kind of like compared to the Amish people who lives there quite self-sufficiently in this northern end. I think they use teepees. They use very archaic things. They're like almost still like hunter-gatherer types, very, very, but intelligent, but maybe they have evolved from the Denisovans also. That could very, very much be the case. Maybe they have migrated over there to them. The Denisovan, as they call it, the Asian Neanderthal. So, but the Denisovan, when they did a facial reconstruction, the Denisovan Neanderthal did not look that Asian. So I think that's probably where they come from. Okay. So, and then they lived there long before the other Japanese people. Because my brain even right now was starting to mix this up again, you know. And they do some weird stuff. They paint their mouths like this here, like with some red clay. They paint their mouths like this, like a clown mouse, this high up, and then like a big smile. Like, almost like, you know, maybe because they think smiling is good, so smiling becomes sort of like a beauty ideal, and then they paint a clown mouse with red clay, the women do, and they make it look like they're always smiling with a big smile. Very strange. So those are the actual original Japanese people. Now, how did this come about? So where do the other Japanese people come from? This is my theory, that the other Japanese people are coming from that spaceship of ETs that landed in Asia. And the very first of the formations that I saw in my baby blanket when I reviewed the video, the very first one looked to me like an extreme Asian, but not just an extreme Asian face, like the ultimate Asian, but really, really extreme. So the eyes were like this. They're literally like this. So that's slanted in that angle. That's slant. No Asian has eyes that are in that slant like this, that going that far up. And I'm not making fun of them. I find Asian faces absolutely beautiful. So, but like this far, like 45-degree angle up, both eyes like this, with the gap in between, like wide apart eyes that it went like this, and then the nose, very, very, it didn't go in or anything, it wasn't narrow. This nose bridge wide, but kind of like dipping in, and then the nose tip coming way up like this. like like this here, like this, and then also far out and up. That's a face that you don't see among humans. So that is an extremely interesting, almost scary, like eerie, a little frightening face, because we're not used to it. It almost looks like an abstraction. It looks like modern art. It looks like a mask that someone created, or some kind of weird sculpture or doll or something. And I'm like really like then real pointy tip of the nose, real sharp edge coming up, going way up like this, and then back down, and then quite a gap under the nose also, like I have also. And then full lips, fuller lips than I have, and also I think the mouth was coming slightly up. I don't remember now how the mouth was shaped. Hmm. I don't remember now how the mouth was shaped. I was particularly paying attention to the eyes and the nose. That was really, really, really absolutely artistic and shocking. And this face, looking at the other ETs, that looked a little bit different than him. So I wonder how many ET species from the Galactic Federation have come to planet Earth, each one settling, colonizing a different part of this planet, and maybe that's where that name Fallen Angel comes from. Maybe a ship with a few people in it that were actually casted out of the Galactic Federation. They have done some breach, and they have broken the law of the Galactic Federation. They were casted down to down. No, there's no down, there's no up. Casted to planet Earth, sideways, right? So casted from somewhere to planet Earth. That's why a lot of people call this the prison planet. Like, let's call it the sanatorium planet. That sounds better to me. But yeah, it does feel a little bit doomsy here on this planet, to say the least. But I think that's probably what happened. So, and then everyone already had a model of planet Earth, where everything was already described in detail. There were things described on it. They had a model globe in their spaceship of planet Earth, where they knew exactly where there were hot spring underground, which people, the native Earthian hominids didn't know about. Okay, so our prehistoric ancestors, before ETs, before they did this gene splicing, they didn't know about any of these things. But the ETs knew like everything about this planet, in geography and geology and physics and astrophysics and the approximate, seemingly linear physics laws that apply here on this particular point in the galaxy. Okay. And they knew all about it. They knew about the weather. They knew how they would create energy. They knew how to create power grids around the whole planet. And they had a spot for the next. They had so many. They had a specific amount, a specific number of colonization spots that they have already predetermined, must have already been predetermined in the Galactic Federation. I'm just putting all the dots together now from everything that I have seen, the documentary films, and I'm thinking also beyond. I'm thinking in terms of connecting all of these puzzle pieces and trying to make sense out of it, what I have seen and heard and read, and the videos I have watched. This is absolutely insanely interesting. Okay, And of course, we have not been taught any of these things. And there'll be another whole video to talk about this, but because there's another humanoid race, there's another humanoid species here that lives here parallel to us, that never have left this planet, that have evolved here and stayed here, and maybe some of them have become spaceborne and gone into orbit and beyond. They may have. Some of them have left the planet. And maybe some of those are like emperor type of ETs and Yahweh type of ETs that want to dominate others. So there's a whole range. I mean, it's the entire ecosystem that is happening in this galaxy and beyond, okay? So that's very, very likely the case that the humanoid species that evolved from a dinosaur, because they had so many more years. They had so many millions and millions more years to evolve than we have, that obviously that it makes sense that they have come to unimaginable abilities and IQ and technology, and the list goes on. I mean, to the point where they are literally able to shapeshift themselves. And I don't know whether that is something that they biologically acquired through evolution, or it is a technology that they have developed. Who knows? But I have seen one. That's why I am talking about all of this. Because, and there was a long time in my life where I rejected all of these things, including the memory of the reptile. I brushed it off as a hallucination. But then I find out from Dr. Emrich, from Dr. Hindak Emrich at Medizinische Hochschule Hannover, Germany, that because he did a lot of research with old hippies that had overdone their brains with LSD and other hallucinogenic substances, he found out, because he cut them apart. He cut those brains in slices, and he studied that in depth before they even had computer tomography and those types of technologies. So he cut them. That was going on in the 50s, 60s, 70s. His major work with them. And he found out, and I find all of that out later in some kind of documentary film. And I put all of these puzzle pieces together, And his work, even though he's an absolutely renowned scientist and in the field of neuroscience, it was just completely brushed under the rug, that information. Why? Because people's egos were not okay with that, what he discovered. It didn't fit in with what they have learned, so they just completely ignored it. That's one way of dealing with it, right? But not for me, obviously. So when I found out about this, I was like, okay, now there's no way I can continue being an atheist, which I was for about 10 years of my life. Also when I met Paul and all of that. But in the back of my head, I already knew this didn't add up, because I knew too many other things that were not congruent with atheism. But I wanted to be an atheist, so it was just let's call it a recuperation phase that I probably needed. My brain needed a break from all of this total chaos of information and actually facts that are there, okay, that are also extremely supplemental with other facts and that tie in just like that, okay. All of these facts, like, they belong together, and they have been together until they were fragmented by people. They fragmented the facts away from each other because they didn't want the facts. They didn't want to acknowledge it. So fragmentation, that's a big thing in psychology with neurotic humans. But anyway, Dr. Emmerich found out, and I talked about this many times before in my videos, but I talk about this again and again because it's very, very important information. When people take hallucinogenic drugs, they disable something in the brain. They disable a filter in the brain. What does that mean? That means, and that will knock the ground out from under your feet, this information, okay? It's just a disclaimer here, because a lot of people will not like that too much, this information, because it knocks all kinds of biology and physics out from under your feet. And even the idea or the thought of what is reality, okay? So this, he called it the discrimination ribbon. It's a filter in the brain and near the hypothalamus, okay, in the midbrain section. And information that comes in through our senses gets routed through this discrimination ribbon. And it's not it doesn't discriminate in order to be mean. It is a filter that filters out stuff that would be way too much for a hominid, bipedal living being to handle. Okay, so we would be so overwhelmed if we would be on a perpetual LSD trip. And my brain is kind of like that. We would be, but not to that extreme, of course, if we had absolutely no filter. If the filter didn't work at all. Or if we didn't develop, if we had not evolved this filter in our species, we would be constantly overwhelmed. We would be so overwhelmed we could not even function in life at all. We would be constantly talking to entities around us, and we would be so busy doing this, we would forget to eat or function. Or we would be making a circle around an entity. Normally we walk through that entity. Why? Because we don't see it, okay? So there are so many entities, people call them ghosts and outer dimensional entities and whatever you want to call it. Mind entities or plasma entities. There's all kinds of entities that are actually not visible to us when our discrimination ribbon, the filter that we evolved with, when that filter fully functions, we do not see these things. Okay. So if you disable the filter, then you will have all of a sudden the ability to see something like this there on the ceiling. You take the filter away, you don't see it. My brain is mixing it up. You take the filter away, you see it. You build the filter up, you don't see it. Yeah, see, my brain reverses things, and that also may have to do with this, with Asperger's. And I have literally every 20 points of the on the Asperger's scale. I have every single point of it, and not only do I have every single point of it, I have every single point in the most pronounced way you can imagine. So, and then my brain is constantly like other people on LSD. So you can just imagine how difficult it is, and how easily my brain, if I talk too fast, my brain will reverse things, and then I say it in reverse, as I just did again. So that happens all the time. That's why I have to be very extra mindful in how I talk and how I write. When I write, and that happened many times in the past where I wasn't paying attention. Like 15 years ago on the internet, I will type away stuff, blah 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 about the whales, and then I didn't reread it. I didn't edit it, and then someone would write to me and say, "Bro, what you just wrote there, I didn't know whales were scientists, but this is what I must have spelled there." And then I look at my comment and I go like, boy, is that embarrassing. So I wrote back to him and I said, I'm sorry, I mistyped it. This is extremely embarrassing. And at that time I didn't even have the option of deleting that comment. Awful bad. So, calm down, breathe, become mindful. I talked about it yesterday. So become really mindful. I have to be really, really mindful how I talk, how I think, and how I spell and explain things in writing. Very mindful. And that's why I reread what I'm writing at least one time, if not 3 times. Okay. And then I promptly see the mistakes I've made, tons of typos, this and that. I forget a word in between. I reverse things, happens a lot. And I have to fix that and completely redo it. Okay. But I do this before I post it most of the time. So I don't have to click the edit function and then it says next to it. It embarrassingly says edited comment, and I don't want that to happen. See, that's my ego. That's I want to come across as intellectually sharp. But I don't want. I don't want people to think that I have edited the comment or that I am unstable in the way I spell. But obviously I am, because of this particular thing, that my discrimination ribbon, the filter that I have in my brain, is not functioning that well. My therapist Esther Odermatt, that I met in LA in primotherapy, she was my first therapist there. And she did a summary on my case, and she presented it in the beginning 1992 to the class of about 100 people. We were all trainees at that time. And she said that she thinks that Nicola's brain had, when she was born, those so-called floodgates that Arjanov called them, the gates of perception, the gates that you are supposed to close when you're being flooded with too much pain, okay? And she thought that because of the birth and also the pre-birth trauma that my mother experienced, that it somehow fried away those floodgates that normally people have. And what she was talking about, I put the dots together later on, was that particular discrimination ribbon that Dr. Hinderk Emmerich was talking about. Okay, that is, and what Arjanov was talking. Arjanov didn't know about Hinderk Emmerich. So if he was alive today, I would tell him about it, and he would acknowledge. He would right away say, "This is super interesting. This is what it is." Okay, I didn't know someone had already written about this, particularly in conjunction of research on people that had damaged their brains with hallucinogenic drugs. So, and they have damaged their floodgates, they have damaged their discrimination ribbon, their filter in the brain. They have scrambled it apart permanently. So these people, even when they were not on drugs, they were still completely mishoga, okay? And those were the ones that ended up in insane asylums. In Germany, I don't know about here in the United States, probably too, in the 50s and 60s, until the government decided to let them all out, which was a big mistake in my opinion, because those people are 51, 50, most of them can't function at all. That's why I'm very much against the use of hallucinogenic drugs, because do you want to run through life like me? And I was born that way, okay? So when we were in our 20s, of course, in the roaring 80s, the worst time in fashion and history, people were all smoking, partying, drinking alcohol, taking drugs, and smoking marijuana, and they were smoking the weed. So, and because people were all doing it, and they said, it's great, here, take two. Here. I will do it. Oh, it's great? Okay, I will do it. Not so much out of peer pressure, but it's like, oh, it's offered to me, and why not? Peace pipe sort of thing. And my brain can't handle it at all. I can't handle marijuana, particularly not the resin, and I can't even handle the weed. It makes me even more paranoid and insecure. I'm already paranoid, very paranoid. But the paranoia I have today has to do with reality, okay? The reality of existence has created this paranoia. But what is paranoia? It's really a state of extreme wariness, extreme vigilance, extreme paying attention. It's a survival mechanism. It's a self-protective mechanism, okay, that is beneficial. You can go overboard with that, and then life becomes pretty miserable. So you have to find a decent balance with that. You have to. You have no other choice. So, but that's what the healing process is all about, to find this livable balance with things. But just because someone's paranoid doesn't mean that they're meshuggah, that they're completely out of it. I mean, one can be paranoid to an unreasonable extreme where I have to, whatever, I can develop some kind of OCD stuff like Howard Hughes did, where he would seal himself into a Las Vegas hotel room and stuff like that. I mean, that goes overboard. Fear of germs, paranoia of germs, and all of that ties in with one another. But my most usually paranoia is about other people, and that's what I have. But rightly so, of course. I'm very paranoid about men in particular. I'm terrified of men. But the more I see, the more terrified I get. And it's very tragic because I happen to like men physically. But it's an ongoing struggle. So it's very, very difficult for me to deal with this. But, I've known Paul for a very long time, and I know that he cares deeply. And so when I meet a man who has a dog and who loves his dog extremely much, like I love my dog, then of course that paranoia fades off, and my mind knows that this is to 99.999% a trustworthy person. So I have my clues that I go by when I meet people, of course. So I trust women way more than I trust men. So, but there are many clues to go by. So certain, or when I see men that are smoking, I already don't trust them. I have OCD with cigarette particles also. I find it gross, and I don't like partiers. So I find partiers pretty gross. I don't like party paraphernalia and particles. So, yeah. I don't like string holders. And I don't necessarily agree with the string theory. See, this is what my brain does. My brain, what other people would never even compute together. My brain puts it together. But sometimes it's in a goofy way, But also, my brain is very, very linked with the infinite cosmos. And sometimes I sit there and look in the sky and start giggling and laughing hysterically because the infinite cosmos showed me something in the clouds, or showed me some kind of thought that was extremely funny, but I call that the universal humor. So that's humor that most people would not find funny at all. This is even more funny then. So, but anyway, let's come back to the ETs. Video is already very, very long, but I find it so fascinating. The ETs, these Oriental, these Asian ETs, they looked very, very interesting. And I feel like I need to paint them. That's what I need to do. I need to paint this ET that I saw in the blanket. I have to do it. I've been wanting to do it. I need to do it. The first thing I'm going to do is tomorrow I'm going to take a marker, or I have a green ball pen up there. I'm going to make a little sketch of that with that. And then I'm at the other house, I'm going to make another sketch with markers on paper, and I'm going to sketch that again, that ET. That is, if I met a man who looked like that, I would be head over heels in love with that person. I mean, that's like, I find that face ultra fascinating. Ultra, ultra, ultra fascinating. That nose. And completely white like a sheet. That the skin, like really white. Not just white with pink in it. Really white, like this sheet here. Complete, that's their skin color. Like complete chalk white skin, and then this, the nose that goes up like this, and these completely slanted and squinted eyes. Amazing. With the huge head. It's like huge forehead, and huge also, much higher than this here. Like, I would say probably 25% bigger neocortex in up and also sideways. All the way. Huge. And then this face that like a rectangular. Oh, the blue god says 1111. That means what I'm saying is the truth. They exist. I can sense it. I just feel it. I feel it intuitively. I have psychic abilities. And this discrimination ribbon, this filter in the brain, also filters away psychic abilities. It filters away all kinds of things. It filters away the perception of telepathy, the perception of other entities. It filters away this incredible use of the brain, where we use literally every single part of the brain, which I think I am doing. That's why I make these connections. So most people use only 10% of their brain or something. So they don't use this entire brain. When this brain is there for a reason, it's pretty big. So let's use all of that. Yet let's use it not just in terms of survival and in terms of reason thinking on a daily basis, how I have to sustain my life. That too, but also thinking out of the box completely, like making completely crazy connections just for the fun of it. That's like play. It's like child play. It's clown play. It's freedom play. It's bird freeness. It's art. Okay, that's what it is. That's what art is. Okay, modern art is that. That's why the Christians hate it. That's another thing that I really have a problem with the Christians. They have that religion is like an extension to this discrimination ribbon in the brain. So it really wants to weed things out, and naturally what happens is discrimination against others comes out of that, obviously. I mean, that's just logic. So if they box themselves in like that, then their egos will attach themselves to this boxed in state and to that religion, and then their egos will not tolerate anything that is outside of their norm. Okay. And I find that not only very dysfunctional and very unsocial, socially inept, I find that dangerous. Okay. It's not good for the world. It's not good for the greater good at all. So the discrimination ribbon, obviously it's there, but when people create religions, then they make this function of boxed up thinking even more pronounced, and that's not good. So most people have this discrimination ribbon, and it would be very difficult to function without it. So I have it. It is functioning. I don't see all the entities, but I see and feel and perceive way, way, way more than the average person. And when I was a child, I already knew I was very different, and because of that, I felt ashamed of myself. And I felt actually puny because of this, which doesn't make much sense. I mean, if you have extrasensory perception, that is a plus, right? It is a strength. It is an ability, not a disability. But as a child, because I felt like I was different to the other ones. The other ones were way more stable, and they were friendly and with each other, and they were type A more, and I was withdrawn, and I felt insecure, and I felt overwhelmed all the time, and I knew I was different, and I felt ugly, and I felt puny, and I felt rejected. It's also my trauma that comes in with it. If I didn't have the trauma, then I would be able to embrace all of this already at age 5. But there was one good thing: my dad embraced my artisticness. So, and because of that, I felt confident to go ahead and paint it all out. So while my mother, on the other hand, thought it was problematic what I was painting, and what was really problematic was not that what I was painting, it was what my paintings were pointing towards. The trauma my paintings were pointing towards, the trauma that I already had at an early age, the trauma of this very highly neurotic family that I grew up in, and the trauma of my ancestors, which shows up in the DNA, and the trauma of my past incarnations. All of this is coming together, and this scientists have found out now this is actually true, that in reincarnation is happening. Okay, there was a little boy that was the most amazing example of all of them, but they're all proof, all of these kids, particularly this one boy. He grows up in a Christian household in the United States, and there's nothing out of the ordinary. Everything is very, very orderly and very boxed up. Also, parents they're not allowed to believe in reincarnation, and the little boy, and they didn't even allow him to watch a bunch of stuff. So it was also pretty monitored and censored what he was allowed to see, and very Christian based everything. And yet he was having nightmares, he would be screaming, he would be painting 1930, 1935, 1936 era fighter airplanes, and he was only like 5 or 6 years old. Did those images come? Even with those emblems on it, with the symbols and all of that, and he even knew the names of these fighter jets, and he said his name is this one guy, I forgot the name now, John Smith or whatever, and that was not his name. And the parents say, why do you keep saying that's your name? Where does all of this come from? And the parents getting really, really worried about all of this. That was somewhere in the 90s or late 90s when that happened. And so they take him to different people, and no one had an answer. They take him to different psychotherapists, and he would keep talking about this and painting this, and And some people suggested this could be a past incarnation. He may have been a, a fighter pilot during World War II. Okay, and he was shot down. And his best friend tried to save his life, but his main aorta was injured and he was bleeding to death right there on the battlefield. And he kept on talking about this, how he was dying. Kept on talking about this little boy. And he developed a tumor right there on that exact spot where he was hit by some kind of metal because he was shot down from the airplane. Hit by the metal that pierced through his skin and into the aorta. And right there he developed a tumor. He was scheduled for an operation. He was on the operation table. That there were already people that were interested in this case. They were already there, right there in the hospital room, because this was so fascinating. And he was on the operation table. They hadn't given him the anesthesia yet. And right then and there, before the doctors came in, and the mother was there, and also other people that were filming this, he had a flashback from being shot down during World War II. And he relived the entire death scene. He relived the entire thing. He's screaming, wiggling, talking, and these people around him had no idea what they were supposed to do now. Should they help or should they prevent this? But the mother said no, she knew intuitively. Let him go through this. It's like a primal scream, basically. And he went through this, reliving this trauma, and after he came out of that, reliving the trauma, he said to the doctor, "I'm done now. I'm through. I'm healed. I have resolved this. I relived my death from my past life." And they were all shocked about this. Absolutely shocked. I mean, there are bizarre things happening in the world, I'll tell you that. And the tumor in front of everyone's eyes started to collapse. And it just flapped down. And they did not do the operation after this. They said, let's give this a break for a while and see what happens. And within the next 2 weeks, this entire thing, the tumor, everything, so-called tumor infarction, where the entire energy was out of that tumor, because the tumor was only there as a reminder. It is the body giving an alarm lamp. Whatever we have in our lives, every illness we have in our lives is an indication of something else underneath, of something that we need to change in our lifestyle, that of something from our past life, of something that our bodies are not capable of dealing with, whether that is a job or a certain food item or a relationship with someone, or whatever we're doing in our daily lives. If, like, for example, I am sitting on my computer for 8 hours per day, and my body at some point says, now I have to talk really loud to you, with this psychotic leg nerve, right, that is screaming, squealing through the whole spinal column into my pain reception unit in the brain. And then I know, oh, okay, I get it. I have been sitting in this dining room on my office chair for 8 hours every single day, and I'm bunching these nerves together. So naturally, these nerves are going to talk to me at some point and say, this is not okay. So and some people, they don't listen to it, they continue, and then they have chronic pain for the rest of their lives. Don't do it, okay? You have to listen to your body talk to you. You have to listen to every single signal your body is giving you. You know, if you are, whatever it is, if you are craving carrots, just to use this as, or if you're craving red beets, for example, or if you're craving iron supplements, okay, then you know your body might be slightly anemic, and you need to supplement with iron, okay, with of course with bioavailable iron form, which is molecular. So either supplements, but better red beets. Okay, some people crave meat. Don't eat animals. You can eat red beets, and you have the same thing. Today, when I woke up today, I was thinking about the ideal meat substitution patty. Okay, I don't trust the ones that are in the stores. I don't trust them not only because I heard bad things about it. Who knows? That may have come from the meat industry, that information. But there may be because you don't know what's all in it. But if you make that yourself, you know what's in it. So the ideal meat substitute patty that you can put on a grill with baked potatoes and everything would be delicious. With the garlic sauce, is made out of completely pulverized cashew nuts, of shredded red beets raw, shredded onions, and shredded champignon mushrooms. Make sure you get the right kind. Make sure that those are not the hallucinogenic counterpart in the forest. So that's why I don't touch mushrooms when I go hiking. So I will eat those that look like, they're called miner's lettuce, that grows here in the redwood forest. They're delicious. They look like hearts, and they're very large. They look like clovers, sort of. They look pretty much like clover, but very, very large, and they taste absolutely fantastic, full of vitamins and nutrients. I always eat that. They're growing at the other house in the front yard, and also they're growing in specific places in the redwood forest when we drive through. So when we take the forest road, there are several entire vast areas where this sorrel, the miner's lettuce, is growing. Very, very good stuff. You can put that also, shred all of this up with spinach, also shred this up, and maybe even wheatgrass. Not the wheat from the Mariana, but wheat grass from the wheat that we eat in bread. Fresh wheatgrass, that can all be, wheatgrass needs to be made into a pulp, just like the cashew nuts and the other stuff shredded. Then you mix this all together. You can put some canola oil in with it and some water. Mix up nicely, put into a square form, like a square tray. You put that into the freezer. Once it's frozen, you pull it back out, turn it over, and you have a block of ideal meat substitute. You throw that on the grill and you have your ideal patty. So I'm gonna end the conversation here. It's too long already. Take care. Peace and love.